Okay, welcome back to the Teemill podcast, everybody. Bit of an experiment today in COVID lockdown. We're also going to film it. So if you're watching on YouTube or listening to us on Spotify, we're joined by an incredible artist, someone who's got some really interesting values, a great story to tell. Hopefully you're going to take something from this that will inspire you, whatever your project is. Paul Harfleet, Pansy Project, Birds Can Fly. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat to us today.
You are welcome. Hello.
So let's start with the Pansy Project. One of the things that I attract, like one of the reasons we wanted to get you on the show is because there's this project that you've done that's really interesting. You've gone around to sites or where homophobic abuse happened. You've planted pansies at those sites and started a conversation. Tell us more a bit about what motivated you to do that.
So the Pansy Project started in 2005, and it started when I was an artist. I was an artist at the time, still am. And I experienced 3 separate incidences of homophobia in one day. And I wasn't really making work. I was kind of painting and doing some sort of conceptual work at that point, but I wanted to kind of make work that was a bit more immediate and kind of had some sort of political edge. And that was kind of like the atmosphere at that point anyway. And then that happened. So I started thinking then about how I could respond to these incidences. And I was talking to the people around me and they were really shocked that that happened at all. I wasn't, because it happened quite regularly, but not that much usually. So I just started thinking about how I could change the way I remembered those locations, because they were near to where I lived in Manchester at the time. And I just started thinking, well, maybe if I just put something there that made it different and change that location somehow, that might make it more, kind of sort of fix it in some way. So I started thinking about roadside memorials and floral memorials and thinking that that might be nice, but I didn't want the flower to be dead. I wanted it to be alive and continuing to live like I do through that experience. And the flower was obviously a really important choice because I wanted it to be really dramatic and flamboyant. I wanted there to be kind of like a gladioli or something, but they don't really grow in Manchester. So, so pansies obviously were the key plant because they obviously are a term of abuse as well. So I just started planting pansies where I'd experienced the abuse. And what was amazing about it was that I was digging into the ground where these things had happened. I put a pansy there, and it changed the way I felt about that location. It sort of healed it. It was quite insane.
Reading a bit about the Pansy Project, one of the things that struck me was where you said, like, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think these are your words. You're like, I'm surprised that other people were surprised that I'd been, I guess, like, I don't know what the right word is. Abused, yeah. And the other people are like, oh, really? No way. And I think, like, so like me, if I'm like a straight white dude, it's like, oh yeah, I haven't experienced that. But I can sort of understand how, like, maybe the location itself can kind of then become toxic or become negative.
Well, yes, there's kind of a lot of discussion around microaggressions and how even if it's something that is relatively minor, like someone driving past a car, can we swear on this?
Yes, you can say what you want.
So, like, what the usual thing is that people would shout, "You fucking faggot," from a passing car, and it's just annoying. And but it depends on my mood. Sometimes it hasn't happened. Obviously, this year it hasn't happened because I've not left the house. But it depends how you're feeling. Sometimes it can really upset you, and sometimes you can get really angry, and sometimes it's just like whatever. But it's having a sort of a ritual, if you like, to respond to that abuse really helped me. And also I would take a photograph of the pansy and I would try and make it kind of, it's evolved. I've been doing it for 15 years. The original photographs are quite little small pansies in the street. Since then, the pansies are bigger in the frame and they're kind of more powerful looking. And But yeah, it was just like an amazing experience, really. And I couldn't really believe that I'd had this idea. And then I started sharing the idea, and people really got it immediately because it's so neat and simple.
I want to talk about the reaction to it, because one of the things that I think is really interesting we've had on this podcast is this kind of, I don't know if it's right to call it a pattern. It's kind of like people who have had an individual experience, and that's very personal and kind of internal, but then they've kind of acted on it, done something really positive in the real world, started a conversation, engaged some other people. I think Rob the Bank was talking about how he was sat in a pub like, wouldn't it be cool if we had a proper party and it just turned into festival? But like, what's interesting to me is how you've turned what is, I mean, it's very hard for me to find a way to talk about those experiences positively. Like, it just seems just all negative, but you've managed to turn it into something that is, I don't know, it genuinely appeals. It's, I suppose, not just to gay people who've had those experiences, but it's kind of like you've managed to connect everybody, like it's everybody with it. So like, tell us about the reaction, because you know, you've talked about it from the start with you doing this stuff, but this has gone on to like be you know, have like films made about it. They've been played internationally at film festivals and stuff. Tell us about the reaction.
So when I first did it, I started a little blog, and that they were fashionable then. And I started sharing it, and then a festival in Manchester called Career Up North sort of commissioned it, sort of retrospectively, and I started then getting publicity and press, and people just completely loved it. And it was kind of already, people immediately were like, oh my God, this is going to be global, it's huge, it's such a brilliant idea. And I was a bit sort of overwhelmed by that reaction, and it's taken me a while to kind of process it and come to terms with it. And the way that it sort of enables people to engage with it and get involved with it is a lovely thing. So people then, I suppose quite quickly, I started planting them for other people. And that's then when it becomes even more special somehow, because if some other people have experienced abuse, and sometimes I've planted them for people who have been terribly beaten and they've lost their job and it's been really just horrific, and I've planted them for where people have died, been beaten to death for being gay. And it's then that it becomes something that is kind of silly, because when people say, you're an artist, what do you do? I say, I plant pansies at the site of homophobic abuse. People often smile because they think that's a ridiculous thing to do. But actually, when you get to the heart of it, where you're going to a place where someone has been killed and they've experienced this terrible thing has happened, and the family and the friends have experienced it, it's just really, really terrible. But this planting and this ritual it's kind of a magical thing. It kind of heals that place in a way. And it's a very specific thing that you do to address that particular issue, which then it explores and shares that reality that people have. So the reaction has been phenomenal, really. And when people hear about it, they're often moved by it, and they can see that they sort of experience pansies in a different way, because they know that pansies are kind of ubiquitous. I suppose the stories I've shared and the kind of have been really touching. And because I've been doing it for so long now, and I've done it in lots of different ways and used different mediums in a way to share the story, it's kind of just, it's sort of almost like an honor. But I've had this idea that it's my idea. It comes from my experience. It's really kind of authentic, and it's from my biography. But then having the ability to share other people's experiences through that has been kind of magical in a way.
So, Paul, one of the things I kind of want to touch on now is it with your Teemill store. There's a sense. I think one of the things I want to talk about is kind of a sense of progress as well. In this, that we are kind of making progress as a society on these issues, and what you've done with both your Pansy Project and your Teemill store, Birds Can Fly, is managed to integrate nature into your work. And is there a reason for that? Because the Birds Can Fly tee's got these beautiful prints. I saw it on Twitter; it just jumped straight out at me, of birds. So, is there a connection there, and is that something you're doing conscientiously?
So what happened is that maybe 4 years ago now, I wrote a children's book called Pansy Boy, And it's basically about a boy who loves birds and doesn't want to go back to school because he knows he's going to be bullied because he's gay. And it's basically me. I loved birds as a child and I used to draw them all the time. And I wrote and illustrated the book. And for the book, I did all of these bird illustrations. And it's just a really lovely thing. And that's been a complete joy because I've been then visiting schools and doing these kind of workshops and talking about birds and pansies and abuse, but in a kind of sort of a silly way, doing lots of drawing workshops. And when the pandemic happened, I was set up, like 2020 was going to be like a really big year for me. I had like a massive show in Bristol, a big show in Chicago, and everything just went and it was just devastating. So I'm living in Bethnal Green and I have a view over London. And I was just sort of sat here going, what the fuck am I going to do? And I was kind of looking at it, and obviously everyone was really scared. It was actually genuinely a terrifying time. And it still is, of course, but it was a shock, I think. And I was just seeing all of these birds fly by, thinking, oh, God, the birds are just carrying on. They're just flying over us. And they're not really affected by this in any way whatsoever. And it just occurred to me that maybe I can just draw some birds, because all social media was covered with, filled rather with just doom and gloom. And I wanted to kind of think, okay, well, I'm going to just say, I'm going to draw a bird for you if you want me to draw you a bird. So I asked my social media followers through the Pansy Project, would you like me to draw you a bird? Thinking that maybe 5 people will go, yeah, draw me a bird. And then I was suddenly overwhelmed by numbers saying, draw me a blue tit, draw me a wren, a robin, all these birds. And so I just started drawing a bird every day through the lockdown and sort of making a little film of me drawing the bird. And it was amazing because it was really helpful to me because it gave me something to focus on. And people really just loved it. They just loved the fact that it was also that time when it was March, obviously we're approaching that time because the time shifts, people were not going to work, so they were hearing the dawn chorus and everyone was talking about birds and how comforting they were. So it just kind of hit on a moment on social media anyway, that I was kind of doing this thing. And then as I draw them, and I've been drawing for years obviously, but as I was drawing them every day, I was getting better and better at them. The kind of skill was getting better. And then people started asking for prints. And so I started, okay, well, maybe I can make some money. So because I'd lost all my money, and I set up a print shop. And then I was selling the prints. And then I thought, okay, well, maybe I need to promote these prints in a sort of a way. So I started dressing up as the birds. Nice. In a kind of a way. And I referred to it from the beginning as I was gently referencing the birds I'd drawn. And it was kind of like a slightly jokey magazine style shoot. And I was imagining me selling these prints with a picture of me dressed as a bird. So I started doing that and people really loved that. And then I started doing more and more of those and it just became a thing. And then I sort of came up with the idea of Birds Can Fly as a kind of brand for it because I kind of love design and that sort of thing anyway. So it was all this kind of, it just emerged from that time.
But this is something that we could perhaps share with somebody who's just getting started out. I think one of the interesting things about the pandemic is how people have kind of stopped and then thought about what they're doing and maybe tried something new. And a constant theme it feels in your work is you kind of, I don't know, it's kind of cliche, but you take lemons and you make really great lemonade. So like, and I think, also your work is encouraging. You're trying to say, okay, look, and it's connecting with other people. There's like empathy and conversation. And so if we can sort of like speak to the people who might be listening, who might be just getting started, I think one of the things that stops people these days when you look at social media is it just looks like everybody's successful all of the time. And you just get up in the morning and bang, you're an incredible artist. Bang, you're you're on a super yacht or a rock star. But it doesn't work like that.
That's story.
Like your story though of how it's iteratively and it evolves and you keep working on it and it starts in the heart and then it's kind of like you don't ever you're persistent, but it's an evolution.
That's really interesting actually, because when I was at art school, I remember going to talks by artists, and my sort of peers were kind of really frustrated because there'd be someone, I won't say any names, but someone would say, I went to art school and then poof, I was at the Venice Biennale. And you were like, well, how did that happen? How did you get there? And I suppose from that moment, I've always been quite honest about the sort of progress and the journey. And because social media allows you to do that, it has become a thing. And you can see, if you followed me over the last year, you've seen that progression and you've seen the I can't say that word, trajectory of it. And
that's a huge in joke at Teemill, by the way, because I keep saying trajectory all the time, and
really?
Yeah. So everyone who like the entire team is just going to be pissing themselves right now.
I have problems with the word edited. I've been editing some film today anyway, but so yeah, it's been just like a really nice thing. And so then with the prints, I was beginning to think, okay, well, maybe I've exhausted the audience for prints. Maybe I need to think about t-shirts. And I had designed t-shirts with different people, and they were fine, but I kind of, because the birds and the kind of the stuff was so ecological, and I really wanted there to be something that was, I couldn't very well create a t-shirt that didn't have some sort of ecological grounding. So I started doing some research into, other ways of doing it and trying to make it work in terms of profit, but I wanted to make sure that it was had an ecological footprint and I wasn't contributing to the destruction of the planet. And so then I found you.
What?
And it was really interesting because I've discovered pretty quickly that the RSPB were using them and Chris Packham were using them. So I was like, okay, well, this seems good to me. So then I just started thinking very much about what I would want to wear. And kind of my main worry was that my drawings are so detailed as whether it would actually work. Because I'd looked, of course, at lots of t-shirts with birds on, and lots of the design and lots of the kind of the illustrations themselves were quite basic and had quite thick lines, and there wasn't that much detail, and I was a bit concerned about that. And I was thinking, why has no one else done these really detailed, beautiful drawings of birds on a t-shirt? And I thought maybe it's just they don't work. But then I got one, obviously I did one and sent it, and it was stunning. And I was like, oh my God, that's amazing. It looks almost as good as it does when it's in real life. So then I could just go for it and then do all these different designs. And I wanted to make sure that they were unique to me. And because when I've been talking about the bird stuff over the year, I've always kind of spoken, said, hello, bird lovers. And so bird lover became this kind of thing. And I wanted to kind of bring my favorite illustrations to that design. And they just work so brilliantly. I'm so pleased with it.
I think the great thing about nature is it's already beautiful. So you kind of, do you know what I mean? I'll tell you, Chris Packham has a Teemill store, incredible graphic designer. I don't think many people know this, but he spent as along with his, like nature work, he spent loads of his time, like as a hobby, collecting vinyl and designing t-shirts. One of the most, just thought I'd mention that. He's kind of got this kind of like Batman life as a t-shirt designer.
Well, Chris Packham has been a supporter of mine.
No way.
Because how the Birds Can Fly sort of flourished was in his group that he set up in the pandemic called the Self-Isolating Bird Club. So I put my images on there and my gentle references, and his team reached out to me and said, would you do one of the hen harrier? Would you draw a hen harrier and do a gentle reference, which I did to kind of promote Hen Harrier Day. And so since then, we've kind of been chatting. I've been on their show thing that they've done. He's got one of my Bird Lover t-shirts, sweatshirts, and he's really been very, very kind, actually.
Just as an interlude, I want to hear your top 5 birds.
Oh my God, that's impossible.
I know, it's such a hard challenge, isn't it?
I suppose that I can talk about the drawings I've done. Because there's some that I love. Well, the Hen Harrier actually is one of my favorites. It's on the shop, and I'm sort of made a rod for my own back because I'm doing an A to Z of birds at the moment.
Nice, the whole collection.
Yes, so I'm sort of I've done it in a really weird order, but I've done S but not G, for example.
Gannet.
I've got a gannet
Have you? Yeah,
bear.
you're in there,
Yeah, I've
sorted.
got a gannet bird lover.
I don't know why I'm trying to help you. You're the expert on this.
Well, it's what's interesting is that I suppose in terms of other people using Teemill or creating a brand, is what I've been doing is using my social media followers to kind of, I've been saying, okay, I'm doing H today. What bird would you like? Would you like heron, hen harrier, or what's the other one? Oh my God, I can't remember. Anyway, I asked. So people then engage with it and say, I want a heron, I want a hen harrier. Hoopoe is the other one.
Hoopoe. Oh, what a bird.
Yeah, it's amazing. That's one of my favorite birds, actually. And so then people were saying, I want all of these birds. And actually, this was last week. I had hundreds, like 800 comments saying, I want this bird or that. And it was so even. I ended up putting all of them up there. So there's H for hen, harrier, heron, hoopoe on the shop now. So I'm kind of doing that, and sort of working out the social media side of it is kind of hard work.
But it's working for you though, because one of the things that we see and we love about doing Teemill is where you have that kind of like stockless model, it's wasteless. It's not like you're stressing out going, oh my God, I've got to predict whether this can sell. And you can be so quick because something comes up, you know, you can react to it. And it's so exciting to see creators, artists, founders like yourself, kind of engaging and making products that actually people want, you know, instead of like, it's kind of like a genuine alternative to like marketing where you try and sell them something that you want to sell them. That I love that engagement. We talked earlier about something that could be inspiring. I think one of the and that seeing people get instant success can be sometimes a little bit demoralizing, but the way that you talk about it in it being a process is encouraging. You know, one of the other things that I think is common among people trying to get into this, trying to succeed at something like this, is that the kind of anxiety of putting themselves in front of their brand. So you know that feeling of like if I take a picture of myself and show myself and put my name to it, that something bad will happen to me. But throughout your work, I think, if I may say so, as much as your projects are really interesting and really resonate, people can engage with it because you allow people the opportunity to kind of connect with you and hear about you and read about you. Can you tell us like a bit about that? Because is that been a positive experience? Do you have any kind of like slight nerves before you take a selfie and talk about your own work, or have you got used to that now?
It is a funny thing because I suppose, well, one thing that's interesting perhaps is that I used to be a drag queen. So it sort of, which is, well, I made a video when I, midway, because there was loads and loads of questions all the time, because I used my wardrobe basically to reference the clothes. And I had hundreds of questions about, your wardrobe must be huge. And I was like, well, people wanted to see my wardrobe. So I made a video showing my wardrobe and talking about how I did it and all this kind of stuff. And I suppose the fact that I used to be a drag queen enables me and gives me some sort of ability to be confident in front of a camera or not be embarrassed about that stuff. And I'm able to make myself look great in the photographs because I know how to do makeup and I know how to do Photoshop and I can make myself look fabulous. And so it's not so, I don't feel worried about it. I suppose it's kind of, I don't know, I think maybe I'm just that kind of person. I'm sort of just so self-obsessed and that I'm able to just go, this is the thing I've made. And I also want to make sure that the T-shirts and the things that I've designed, I like, and I want to, and in order to make that work, I have to wear it and feel like I want to wear it. Otherwise it's not going to work. People aren't going to believe it.
Dude, that is so important. If I could like do a bold underline.
Yeah. Yeah, because there was a point when I was designing for what I felt like people wanted. And I had the design and I was like, I know people are going to love this. It had all British garden birds in it and they were all sort of entwined in leaves and it had bird lover on it. And I was like, I like it, but I just would not wear that. And I knew that people might like it because it had lots of birds on it, but I was like, I just can't. It's just not for me. So I was like, no, I'm not going to do that one. And sometimes some of the designs you kind of live with and they're on the shop. You live with them for a bit and you kind of see how they're going and how people are buying them or not. And you go, actually, maybe that one doesn't work. And you can remove it. That's what's amazing. And you can update it. It's really amazing. So I think that for me, and that is part of that, what you're talking about in terms of honesty and sharing, bringing people into it. It's going, this hasn't worked. I'm not doing that. Or this is kind of like it's a success, or this isn't a success. And I suppose that's the kind of thing that has been it's been so fascinating to do it, because like I said earlier, I've done t-shirts with the Pansy Project before, and it wasn't in this way. I was kind of a bit clunky and a bit weird, and I didn't really love the t-shirts. And I sold a few, but it wasn't so engaging somehow. And I've worked with other people when we've created them beforehand and printed them and done them in the way that is more conventional. And that worked well. You know, like someone from Coronation Street wore one, has got them on his wardrobe and all that kind of thing. So that has worked well. But this has been more of a kind of, this has pushed my design abilities in a different way and has kind of pushed me to create different things that are inspired by birds, like the bird feather things, which I think are sort of a bit kind of calmer as a design, and people feel more engaged with those in a way, perhaps.
More of a conversation almost in a lot of ways.
Yes, yeah, and I think what for me art, when you're at art school, people are saying, what is art for? What is the purpose of art? And for me, it's always been about conversation. It's been something that is really important somehow.
Yeah, and that I think, you know, that's that experience you're talking about there, which is that as soon as I realized that actually, rather than trying to think about what people want, just make products that I love. You know, the internet's such a big place that I think what in my experience, because I had to, when I started making these videos, it's like, oh, flipping heck, this is hard, like it's stressful, you know. As soon as you just get the reaction, when you're yourself and you get the reaction, I think, do you think it's what motivates you, or like the bit that's the bright bit in your day is when you get someone who just says, I love this?
Of course, it's amazing. I think the other night I may have had a glass of wine or two, and someone had bought a T-shirt and they'd taken a photograph. No, it was someone had taken a photograph of their friend who they'd bought a T-shirt for, and it's the enthusiastic ornithologist one, and they were using binoculars with the T-shirt, and I was like, oh my God, and they're in America. So I was like, oh my God, my design, it's a peregrine falcon enthusiastic ornithologist T-shirt. And this guy was wearing the T-shirt with the binoculars. And I cried a little bit because it was so emotional, because I was like, oh my God, that's amazing and that you can't ever get bored of that. It's like with my book and with the film that I was in. Whenever anyone is engaged with your work, it's really emotional, because you know that somehow you've contributed something to the world, and you've given something that is kind of nice. When someone loves what you do, there's nothing better.
Yeah, and when you put your face to it, it's not just like, I like that product. It's like, hey Paul, you know what you are doing. It's a vote for you, and people get behind people. I think the biggest underestimated kind of thing in branding is that there are a lot of people out there that like supporting other people.
Yeah.
So I'm going to kind of like give us a plug. Where do we go to buy your stuff?
So you go to birdscanfly.teemill.com. There's some hyphens in there, but you can find it that way, or you can go to the pansyproject.com.
Pansyproject.com, and we can see your wider story as well as some of the vids. Favorite T-shirt you recommend us one? It sounds like the Hen Harrier's up there.
The Hen Harrier, I do. The Bird Lover with a wax wing is probably, I think it's one of my best sellers, and the bird just works so perfectly with the text, and it's beautiful. The drawing and the bird itself, the drawing is beautiful because I did it, of course, but the bird itself is really lovely, and the gentle reference of that bird was just perfect. Everything about it was just magical.
So you're taking situations from your own life, things that you really care about and your values, and then you turn them into something really positive. You put in that story out there, letting people engage with it, but also you're engaging with your customers and starting a conversation and creating products that you love, and people are finding that. I'm going to I was thinking about artists. Artists is such a broad word, isn't it? But it's this kind of people who can take, messages and turn them into things and start conversations visually, or with the things that they write or the photos they take. So I don't know if you saw this Amanda Gorman poem recently at the Biden inauguration. Did you read
Oh
that?
my God. Yes, I cried.
Yeah, that there's light in the darkness. Brave, if you're brave enough to see it, or if you're brave enough to be it. Paul Harfleet, a ray of light. Thank you so much, dude, for sharing your story. And we're all looking forward to seeing what you do next via pansyproject.com. Thanks for joining us.
You are welcome. Thank you for having me.